Breaking news coming out of the Israel-Gaza conflict. Uh, if the stories are true, which it seems to be, this will be the largest humanitarian crisis over extending Yemen. Israel is set to invade Rafah, the refugee city that is now housing 1.5 million Palestinians who have fled Gaza City and Gaza itself. Israel is determined to advance with its unspecified plans to invade the city. And let's get right to the latest news here. And this would be really big because this will be a catastrophe. We're going to do it. Israeli Prime Minister is set on invasion of Rafah. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated his intention to extend the military operation in an interview broadcast late on Saturday. We're going to do it, he declared, and said that the plans are being worked on. The statement comes despite international alarm. Let me just load this up one more time so you can read it well. It's an important article. Statement comes despite international alarm over the potential for carnage. An estimated 1.4 million Palestinians are crammed into Rafah and hemmed in by the border with Egypt after being ordered by the Israeli military to evacuate their homes elsewhere in the Gaza Strip. The United States, Israel's main backer, has warned against the plan to expel the ground assault into the city, which has for months been subjected to almost daily aerial bombardments. It's easy to bombard a refugee city. And of course, the propaganda ministers and the foreign ministers have all been exclaiming that Hamas is residing here. It's the reason why they're bombing. Everywhere's Hamas to Israel. Everything is Hamas to Israel. But what the reality is that this is a massacre of a people that can't defend itself. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, well, he's ignorant, he's an anti-Jew, that's why he's saying, well, that's not going to work with me. I report the news as is. And I use multiple sources, and I don't have any political, religious constitution that I go by. I'm a human being, and I know the difference between right and wrong. Now, if you're going to bomb a refugee city, if you're the head of the military of the government, you know that you're going to kill more civilians than you will the enemy. And by doing so, you're going to make new enemies. In other words, if you kill a man's family, destroy his livelihood, destroy his neighborhood, what does he have left? The only thing he has left is joining the militant groups that are fighting against the entity that destroyed your life. Revenge. That's what Israel is hoping for. Now, Israel told these people as they were leveling Gaza City to go to the south, near the Rafah border. And now they're going to invade the Rafah border and destroy whatever's left. Where do these 1.4 million people go? Now, what this will do is heighten tensions in where either Hezbollah is going to get involved fully, or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, or the Al-Quds Brigade. And that's what Israel wants, because they want the United States to fully engage with them against Iran, Lebanon, and Syria. And the United States just pulled out of Iraq and Syria because they've been taking heavy tolls. At least 25 Palestinians have been killed in overnight strikes on Rafah, according to Al Jazeera journalists on the ground, as the Israeli army have been ramping up its attack this week. Over 28,000 Palestinians have been killed since the start of the war. Netanyahu said in the interview with U.S. outlet ABC that he agrees with Washington that civilians need to be evacuated from Rafah before. Where are they going? We're going to do it while providing safe passage for the civilian population so they could leave, he said, according to published extract of the interview. However, it's unclear where such a large number of people who are pressed up against the border with Egypt and sheltering in makeshift tents can go. Remember, Egypt has closed its border. You can't go there. When asked, Netanyahu would only say they are working out a detailed plan. The plan, actually, the foreign policy for Israel was basically to get rid of all the Arabs out of Israel and have them go to Jordan in the north, Lebanon, and then Egypt in the south. That's the plan. They're not coming back to Gaza. Gaza mediators and others warned Israel of disaster if it launches a ground invasion on crowded Rafah. Israel's neighbors and key mediators warned Saturday of disaster and repercussions if its military launches a ground invasion in Gaza's southern city of Rafah, where Israel says remaining Hamas strongholds will look at. Of course, everything's Hamas. Israeli airstrikes killed at least 44 Palestinians, including more than a dozen children, because they're Hamas too. More children have been killed in this conflict than anywhere on the face of the earth. Kill the future of these people. Israeli military can do that very well. They've been doing it for decades. I'm not anti-Semitic for saying these things. This is the hard facts. You may not like it, but it's uncomfortable truths. The announcement set off panic. More than half of Gaza's 2.3 million people are packed into Rafah, which borders Egypt. Many fled there after following Israeli evacuation orders that now cover 2/3 of the territory. Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shukra said that any Israeli ground offense on Rafah would have disastrous consequences and asserted that Israel aims to eventually force the Palestinians out of their land. Egypt has warned that any movement of Palestinians into Egypt would threaten the 4-decade-old peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. Another mediator, Qatar, which is housing, incidentally, the leadership of Hamas. I don't know why Israel's not going into Qatar. Maybe it's because they have a tentative relationship. Also warned of disaster. And Saudi Arabia warned of a very serious repercussions. Saudi Arabia is not going to do shit. And they're all talk. They've been talk for decades, since the 60s at least. No, we're not going to basically give you oil, on the dollar less than any other country, unless you start making concessions about what to do with the Israeli problem in Palestine. Saudi Arabia, after the oil boom, found out what they were worth because they restricted sales exporting to the United States, which led to the oil crisis. Saudi Arabia, after all these decades, found out what they were worth in the 1980s. There's even increasing friction between Netanyahu and the United States. So here's a map I use sometimes. It's Live Map. It's a very good map, and it shows you these little decals, which basically tell a story about what is happening in this area. You can see there's a missile here, right? So I'll make myself disappear for a second. So I click on this comes up. 3 dead Israeli warplanes bombed a civilian car west of Rafah, south of the Gaza Strip. You can see it's already started. Press on this. 2 dead in Israeli raid on a police car in the Brazil neighborhood in Rafah, south of the Gaza Strip. Al-Qassam Brigade's Israeli bombing kills 2 detainees and wounds others. And 1 dead and a number of injured in an Israeli raid on a house near the city of Rafah. Egypt sends large security reinforcements on the patrol to border with Gaza. You close up a little bit more. Intensification of Israeli raids on Rafah, south of Gaza City. It's already started, as you could see. So what are we, the American people, to do? Are we to just sit here and just basically do nothing? Will the protests continue? Are we to expect another false flag? In other words, a terrorist event by, say, somebody coming in from the open borders in the South, which will basically precipitate a war? Could be. There's another, variable scenarios here, various. Um, this is a disaster. If there's a full military incursion into Gaza, into the Rafah refugee camp, and that Egypt won't let them in, this will be the biggest slaughter of the war. And this is exactly what Israeli foreign politics want, because they want a full-scale war with Iran. And by default, Syria and Lebanon, which will involve the United States. Well, I didn't want to make a long video. I just wanted to tell you about the latest updates. And if there's ever breaking news, you're going to hear it first from me, without bias and without prejudice. Okay, guys? I'll keep an eye and an ear out in the open for the next couple of hours to see what comes from this. So have a good rest of your day, everybody.